As you know, because I basically scrawl it on your foreheads every time we have a lesson, number one, open fifths do not have context. Because there is no third in the chord, they are lacking the harmonic context of either being major or minor. And because of this, it doesn't really have a pull within the tonal area that it has. Number two, as well as there not being any hierarchy of chords in relation to each other, there is also no hierarchy between the pitches in the chord. So, if we look back at the score, as you see we have a B and an F sharp in the left hand, but then another B and another F sharp in the right hand. So, 2 Bs, 2 F sharps. In German music, what would generally be considered to be better is if we had 3 Bs and 1 F sharp. This would then be confirming that B is not only the root of the chord, but the tonic of the harmonic area we are in. But because they are equal, there is no more hierarchy of the root of the chord, the fifth and the third. Everyone is equal. And finally, number 3, the highly chromatic writing, whilst it kind of floats tonally and gives movement, because Debussy is so fond of repeating his little snippets of motif, as you see, most of his phrases come in 2-bar sets, the second repeating the first. We always kind of go on our little kind of line journey, but then we climb back up to the note we started on because of the repeat. So this again gives an illusion of movement because the line is moving. However, the sitting points of the line, so the notes that fall on the strong beats, that kind of where we sit down on a chord, are the same note, which actually gives us an overall sense of static writing. It's actually very still. The sitting notes isn't an official term, by the way. It's one that I've kind of made up to describe the phenomenon that I'm talking about. Now, every time this opening theme between the fifths and the thirds appears again, it doesn't appear in exactly the same form. This is a great thing to do in your compositions when you're writing things. If you've got a repeat, what Debussy does here is he either changes the colour, the pitch, or both. So, looking at the score, what we have in our opening is the octaves B and F sharp, as we've already seen. So this is kind of in the middle register of the keyboard and kind of going slightly towards the top end of the treble stave, but not really above. You may have noticed earlier I said that these were orchestral pieces. The score that we're looking at right now is Ravel's transcription for 2 pianos, 4 hands, 2 pianos. This is because it's easier to see the pitches and what's happening in a more condensed score, as opposed to a huge orchestral score where the transposing instruments are in their own keys and things like that. Now, when this comes back later, as you can see, the pitches are the same. We have Bs and F sharps. This is the very first chord of the motif. However, we've got an extra octave in the register at the top, so this is changing the timbre of the work without changing the actual pitch itself by adding the octave on the top. So you may think, hang on a minute though, because we've got 3 notes in the left hand and 3 notes in the right hand, but if we look carefully, we've got, if we count up, a B and an F sharp, notice the key signature, it being an F sharp. We then have another B, shifting up to the right hand, an F sharp, then another B and another F sharp. So the middle B and F sharp is just split between the 2 hands so that you can kind of get it all under your fingers. And then if we look at this one, which is more towards the end of the piece, in this example we've got more notes in our chords, but we're kind of in the same register, but because we've got more notes in the chord, it's adding a thicker texture to what we had before and filling out the context that was missing previously in the chords. So looking at this, it still doesn't mean though that this is especially tonal. So if we count up what our pitches are here in the left hand, we've got a B, an F natural, an A, in the right hand a D, F natural, A, and another D. So in the right hand, this is just D minor, this is normal. However, we've got a B in the bass underneath in the left hand. So if we add all these notes together, what we actually have is a half diminished chord. Now, Caitlin, what is a half diminished chord? What a half diminished chord is, let's build one up. We've got a B on the bottom. We're going to build up a diminished chord as normal. So this is made up of minor thirds for the root, the third and the fifth. So a B on the bottom, minor third above that is a D, and a minor third above that is an F natural. This is relatively normal. Now, if we add another minor third on top of that, we get our normal diminished seventh. This is an A flat, F to A flat being a minor third on the top. But what Debussy's done is he's not used an A flat, he's used an A natural instead. So this is not a minor third on the top, this is a major third, and this is why it's a half diminished. So it's almost diminished. The bottom three notes are normal, but then instead of a minor third you've got a major third on the top, and this kind of gets rid of the really strong pull harmonically that the normal diminished seventh has. The A on top really kind of throws it off, so in terms of harmonic context he's taking away the pull that kind of comes from the German way of thinking. So what Debussy is doing here is he's taking his motifs on a journey, but it's not a journey of harmony, it's a journey of colour. Why is this impressionist? The philosopher Hume describes an impression as the immediate effect of hearing, seeing or feeling on the mind. So the idea here is that we hear the music, in this case we are listening to Nuages by Debussy, and the music creates an image of clouds in our mind. Instead of being, here is a picture of clouds, you listen to a sound and then the image of clouds comes into your head. However, it goes even deeper than this. Because it's impressionist, it's an impression of clouds, not literal clouds. What we're actually creating in our mind shouldn't be literal clouds, but the feeling we get when we observe clouds. So we hear the music, and then in our minds we have the feeling we get when we are looking at clouds. This is impressionism. And this is the same thing that happens with the paintings as well. For example, the Monet sunrise, we're not, when looking at the painting, having an image of a sunrise in our minds, but what Monet is doing is evoking the feeling we get when we watch a sunrise. The art critic who originally dubbed Monet's paintings as impressionist, and bearing in mind this happened before the music was dubbed impressionist, he explains that they render not the landscape but the sensation produced by the landscape. So, whilst a German may write a piece about clouds, the French would write a piece about the feeling you get when you look at clouds. Notice how you've got this kind of difference between a very literal, this is about this, and then a much more aesthetic, more kind of emotional way of thinking of, this is how I feel. It's kind of the technical versus the aesthetic. Aesthetic meaning the way things look, the way things sound, a bit more of an emotional take on things. But now let's look at some other styles of music that inspired Debussy over his lifetime, particularly in Nuages, inspirations that allowed him to break away from the German traditions.